What's up, everybody? This, of course, is King Von Jr. of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. So I said it backwards, but like I said, it's King Von Jr. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter at 301 King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at at Victory Pod One. Excuse me. You can follow me on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm also the social media producer for, of course, Perfect Plex Talk Radio, hosted by friend of the program, Mike Knox, on Mondays at 6 p.m. And so, of course, I want to wish everyone to have a happy Thanksgiving. Like I said, of course, enjoy the food, enjoy football, enjoy family, and everything else. Just enjoy. Just being thankful for the many blessings that God has given us. So that's really what it is. Of course, if you're on YouTube, you can follow me on YouTube, youtube.com/@VonRest Virginia. Please make sure to subscribe for more great content. I know over this past weekend, I got a chance to go to this art exhibit, Umbrella Art Fair in DC. And of course, like I said, great to see some of the artists that I follow on social media. Of course, shout out to Chuck Styles, some of the great, paintings that he had up for exhibit. And of course also a guy named Alex Solis. He does a series called Icons Unmasked. It's hilarious, downright comical. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, and also I want to go, side note. I also want to go into, of course, the weekend wrestling from Smackdown, Raw, NXT, and most importantly, I'm going to give my predictions for Survivor Series WarGames. And so, without further ado, I want to go into my usual NFL recap. And all I want to say is, how about them Cowboys? You know what I mean? And I'm proud of it. And so, like I said, as far as that, it was amazing. This is week 12. That was week 12 that's in the books now. And so, yes. So as far as I'm going to give a recap of that. And so of course on Sunday, the Texans defeat the Bills 23-19. The Bills looking a little shaky right now. Of course, the Chiefs defeat the Colts 23-20. The Seahawks defeat the Titans 30-24. The Packers defeat the Vikings 23-6, crushed them. The Ravens defeat the Jets 23-10. Of course, also the Lions defeat the Giants. The Lions defeat the Giants 34-27 in overtime. By the way, like I said, the Chiefs defeat the Colts in overtime. The Bears defeat the Steelers 31-28. The Patriots defeat the Bengals 26-20. The Browns defeat the Raiders. Browns defeat the Raiders 24-10. Let's see, the Browns defeat the Las Vegas Raiders 24-10. The Jaguars defeat the Cardinals 27-24 in overtime. My estimation, the game of the weekend. How about them Cowboys? The Dallas Cowboys defeat the Philadelphia Eagles 24-21 with a comeback after being down 21-0 going, of course, in the first half. And Dallas scored 24 unanswered points. That's a miracle. So we were down 21-7 at the most, going into halftime, 21-7. And before you know it, the comeback continues. So we scored 24 unanswered points. That was like I said, miraculous. One of the best comeback games I want to see in Cowboys history. And congratulations to Dak Prescott for now becoming, the Dallas Cowboys all-time passing leader. So congratulations for that milestone. And not only that, in other games, the Falcons defeat the Saints 24-10. The Rams smoked the Buccaneers, ran over them rather, 34-7. Of course, on Sunday Night Football. And on Monday Night Football, the 49ers defeat the Panthers 20-9. And one of the things I wanted to get into also, even before I go into wrestling, I saw this list of the top 30 quarterbacks of all time. I guess you could take it with a grain of salt. It was done by, done by Fox, Fox Sports. But the thing about it is that It's just like, go ahead and pull this up. It's going to be real quick. Matter of fact, I mean, for some, I guess somehow this happened to resurface on my timeline. Um, Fox NFL came up with their top 30 quarterbacks of all time. This is actually heading into this 2025-26 season, and so the top 30 the names. I'm gonna give a quick rundown of it. Number one, Tom Brady. Number two, Joe Montana. Number one is Tom Brady. Two, Joe Montana. Three, Patrick Mahomes. Four, Peyton Manning. Five, Dan Marino. Six, Aaron Rodgers. Seven, Drew Brees. Eight, John Elway. Nine, Johnny Unitas. 10, Roger Staubach. 11, Steve Young. 12, Brett Favre. 13, Bart Starr. 14, Ben Roethlisberger. 15, Fran Tarkenton. 16, Troy Aikman. 17, Terry Bradshaw. 18, Otto Graham. 19, Warren Moon. 20, Lamar Jackson. 21, Jim Kelly. 22, Dan Fouts. 23, Kurt Warner. 24, Joe Namath. 25, Matthew Stafford. 26, Phillip Rivers. 27, Len Dawson. 28, Josh Allen. 29, Eli Manning. And number 30, Donovan McNabb. So that is the rundown of the top 30 quarterbacks of all time. So with that being said, can't be too mad about it. I know I analyze a lot of lists all the time. Certain people just make these lists for conversation, rage bait, what have you. But if there's something that I, certain things I would change, I would address it, especially if it's just glaring. I put Peyton in number 3. You know what I mean? Brady, Montana, and Peyton, those are my top 3. Top 2, they definitely got it right. Patrick Mahomes, in that case, for top 5, top 10. I keep Dan Marino ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure. I still have Rodgers ahead of Breeze. I put Elway ahead of Breeze. I even put him ahead of Rodgers, to be honest with you. I would take Staubach out the top 10, replace him with Brett Favre. So I put Favre ahead of Rodgers and Breeze, to be honest with you. So, like I said, I would not put Staubach ahead of Steve Young. I'd move him below Favre and Steve Young. I still have him ahead of Starr. I put Roethlisberger ahead of Bart Starr. Bart Starr's early Green Bay, way before anybody's time and all that type of stuff. So, whatever. I guess that's for legacy purposes. Should I move Bart Starr further down, to be honest with you, right behind Bradshaw and Aikman, for real. Like I said, Roethlisberger's placement, I ain't too mad about it. Lamar Jackson, very high. You know what I mean? When it's all said and done, I'd put him ahead of Warren Moon. To be honest, he already has an MVP, something Warren never got. You know what I mean? So as far as that's concerned, and like I said, if you want to chime in, like I said, just leave a comment below and let me know. But like I said, as far as that, I just moved Jim Kelly much further down. I put Josh Allen ahead of him. As far as I'm concerned, Josh Allen's Buffalo's greatest quarterback ever. The Dan Fouts thing, all right, whatever. I put Stafford ahead of him. Kurt Warner definitely ahead of him. Joe Namath, I certainly moved down. Probably maybe one spot ahead of Phillip Rivers. I'm not sure, but like I said, time has not been very kind to Joe Namath's legacy. Same with Starr and Fran Tarkenton, guys like that. You know what I mean? It's like, if anything, their numbers and legacies have not aged very well over time. So like I said, I moved Matthew Stafford ahead of several of those guys. I keep Kurt Warner ahead of Stafford, though. You know what I mean? Josh Allen, like I said, moved above Jim Kelly. Like I said, an MVP, and also just from a skill standpoint, and just just when it comes to his upside, it's not even close. Eli, got in by the skin of his teeth. I'd probably replace McNabb with Russell Wilson, to be honest with you. But other than that, if I were to, I may brainstorm my top 30 pretty soon. I'm already finishing up the top 10 Cowboys list as we speak. But yeah, like I said, it's pretty much it when it comes to NFL news. So I'm waiting for the. Hello, so on Twitter decided to tap in on here. What's up, so Marcos? Yeah, like I said, thank you very much for for tuning in. I appreciate that. The more the better. Lumber. All right, hello, what's up? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for checking in on YouTube. I really appreciate that. If you're a fan, if you like this content, please make sure to like and subscribe as well, and also share with others. And of course, that'd be greatly appreciated. Get my subscription, numbers going up on YouTube as well. So without further ado, it's time to go into the week in wrestling as we know it. As far as Friday Night Smackdown, we see the division will have nothing to do with John Cena's retirement match. So Cody Rhodes and Usos made sure that Bronson Reed would not advance in the last time now tournament on Friday's episode of SmackDown. We saw that Bronson Reed, Bronson Reed had a major opportunity on Friday. Whenever Carmelo Hayes would have advanced him, into the quarterfinals in the tournament to determine who will be John Cena's final opponent. Of course, Bronson was in a strong position to win the match, accompanied by Braun Breaker, Logan Paul, and Paul Heyman, but Cody and the Usos had other plans in mind. So we saw that the women's WarGames match had a major facelift out of the final two superstars for both these teams were revealed. We saw that former women's Intercontinental Champion Becky Lynch joined Nia Jax's team, while AJ Lee decided to join Rhea Ripley's team. And so of course, like I said, WarGames drama caused Bronson Reed a dream match against John Cena. We saw the division started the show off. Of course, Paul Heyman decided to wax poetic by his team's strategy before introducing the group's newest member, Logan Paul. This one, of course, like I said, this when Usos music came out as they insulted their rivals. Paul Heyman wondered how they cope with the numbers disadvantage. Jimmy reminded Heyman that they learned from him and they didn't come alone. And the camera cut backstage to find Usos WarGames teammate Cody Rhodes, hanging upside down from the stairs of his bus. Of course, as we saw, the culprit will be none other than Drew McIntyre himself. Of course, the Usos ran to the load dock to check on Cody. And of course, SmackDown GM Nick Aldis confronted the Vision backstage. He told him that they only would tolerate their presence on SmackDown because Bronson had a match. Otherwise, they wouldn't be welcome. Amos said he'd gone to great lengths to ensure that Drew wouldn't enter the arena. I respect for Nick. Of course, Paul Heyman extended a handshake, but Nick Aldis ended up snubbing. And so we saw that. Of course, we saw that the main match, in this, of course, it was the last time it's now tournament where Carmelo Hayes defeated Bronson Reed by way of countout after interference from Reed's WarGames opponents. And of course, Bronson almost had the match won after interference from Logan Paul and Braun Breaker, but Usos leveled the playing field. After that, Cody finally emerged as he planted Bronson with Crossroads ringside and rolling Hayes back into the ring. And of course, the ref didn't know about Cody's actions and awarded Melo a countout. And that's when Melo advanced to the quarterfinals of the tournament. Of course, in other news on SmackDown, the United States, of course, the United States Championship was defended once again as Ilya Dragunov defeated JD McBobblehead by way of pinfall with an H-bomb to retain the U.S. Championship. DIY, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa defeated Fraxian by way of pinfall. Candice LeRae yanked off Axiom mask, allowing Gargano to roll him up as Axiom covered his face. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley hashed out the differences ahead of WarGames, because they see that there's a bigger enemy ahead of them. Literally. And another last time is now tournament match happened as Penta defeated Finn Balor by way of pinfall with the Mexican Destroyer. And AJ Lee joined Rhea Ripley's WarGames team after Becky Lynch joined Nia's team. So now the teams have officially been lined up. And so now it is time to go into Monday Night Raw, which took place in Oklahoma City. You know, and of course, with Survivor Series less than 1 week, the advantage in the men's WarGames match was on the line in the main event of Raw. And so, like I said, of course, Raw took place in OKC. OKC, of course, home of the Thunder. And Roman Reigns, opened the show. Typical, as he says, OKC, acknowledge me. You know what I mean? But he was quickly interrupted by Cody, WWE champion, and Roman explained that he hasn't liked. Reigns explained that he hasn't liked Rhodes, who was on the WarGames team to back up his cousins, the Usos. And Rhodes extended a hand and said, "Welcome to my team." So he's already claiming leadership already. So as things started to get tense between both of them, CM Punk hit the ring, to try to calm things down, lighten the mood. And that belt looks great on Punk, by the way. And of course, I peeped out their shoe game, if you will. Like so you CM Punk had the Jordan 1s, and Roman, had a pair of 6s. And I was like, all right, cool. And of course, Cody had his 3-piece suit. You know what I mean? So like, see, things got tense between them. Of course, CM Punk, being him, Punk being Punk, of course, known to add humor, just for the sake of just for the sake of disarming the situation. And so, side note, CM Punk and Roman Reigns will both be in the new Zootopia movie, Zootopia 2. Of course, as Punk hit the ring to try to calm things down, but the tension only increased between the three before Reigns said that belt would look better on my shoulder. And of course, leaving both Punk and Rhodes to wonder whose belt Reigns was talking about. And the fact that Roman, sorry about that. The fact that Roman did not even look in their direction, he just left it for mystery. Just left it up for them to guess, to guess which belt he was going to take. And as well also saw that Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre defeated the Usos in the WarGames Advantage match. So down the stretch, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed came to ringside. And of course, this brought out CM Punk and Cody Rhodes to even up the score. But then instantly the chaos ensued, which allowed Logan to score roll-up victories to secure the advantage for his team in Saturday's match. After the match, Roman Reigns made his way to the ring, dropping a Superman punch on everybody until Brock Lesnar made his own entrance, and this was the viral moment of the week. Hold on. Anyway, real quick, back to the regularly scheduled program. Like I said, this is, like I said, this was the ultimate viral moment of the week, because when Brock Lesnar came out, as soon as the pyro hit, and he stopped, and like I said, as soon as Legend was going to make a stop, for the pyro to cue, he slipped, and that was his own Shockmaster moment. Call him Brock Master, I guess you could say. So, Brock Lesnar turned to the Shockmaster at that moment. And, there's memes everywhere, especially with the Sub-Zero memes. Like I said, especially with those Sub-Zero memes where it looks like he's freezing the ground and Brock slips. And I was like, oh, man, and of course, not only that, but I made a joke about it. I was like, this is what happens, like I said, I was like, this is what happens, when God shows you the red flags, you know what I mean? And clearly, like there are a lot of, I say that jokingly, but the truth is there have been a lot of red flags when it comes to Brock Lesnar's return, you know what I mean? And, of course, for those, if you know, so yeah, like I said, it's just, Brock, I mean, he's been, I guess, been on the slump, if you will. I mean, he's had a few mishaps, I guess you could say, whether it's that time, once it was on Smackdown, where this dude ripped his pants. Like, I kid you not, those are Smackdown or something where his jeans ripped. And so, like whether it was that, or or even just recently, where this dude slipped during his own entrance. But of course, Brock being a good sport, um, you know, clearly just laughed it off and kept it moving. But but I was like, man, um, yeah, this dude can't catch a break. And the thing is, there are a lot of people who who voice their frustrations to the company, about a guy like Lesnar. But I digress. That's a whole other story. Um, you know what I mean? But so, like I said, of course, Brock Lesnar made his own entrance. So as Lesnar came out, the two teams brawled, and of course, ultimately with Lesnar and Reigns, arch rivals going at each other as the show went off the air. So clearly in 2025, they're picking this back up. Even though I thought that SummerSlam 2022 match was, the final nail in the coffin, and of course it ended with a great exclamation point. I mean, but the fact that Roman sat on that broken table, that like I said, that's sat on those pieces, sat on those pieces that sound those pieces for that broken table as Brock was covered. You know, Roman symbolically, of course, putting the one up to show that he was the last man standing. And what better way to conclude a storyline, to conclude a rivalry than that? Much like how um, that Hell in a Cell match was the conclusion of the Undertaker and Mankind rivalry. I mean, you can't get any better than that, right? Storybook, or or like how WrestleMania 26, was a perfect conclusion to the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker rivalry. For me, that SummerSlam 2022 last man standing match could have been that, you know, but for some reason in 2025, people they want to revive, this Roman and Brock, feud with no real direction for it whatsoever. Um, you know what I mean? And I don't know if it's me, but it seems I know I can't be alone, but it seems as though in 2025, Brock Lesnar doesn't have the same aura as he had before. And it's gotten to the point where it's just like people want to move on from Brock. Um, if anything, if there was, like I said, if I were to use, like I said, if I were to utilize Brock, in any other scenario, it would have been, like I say, for a feud with someone like Gunther and also, Braun Breaker. Now they're on the same team. But ultimately, someone like Obafemi, to be honest with you. But now it's just like whatever. Back to the drawing board when it comes to another Brock versus Roman, match or whatever the case is. I'm like, come on now. My bad. I just like to coordinate sometimes. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, 2025, Brock and Roman again. I mean, whatever. I guess for WarGames, but the thing is, it speaks volumes to how depleted this roster is looking, especially with Seth's injury. And how they've had to pivot. You know, so initially, I thought that of course, that Logan, was going to be his main replacement, but for the sake of WarGames, of course, now. For the sake of WarGames, they're going to bring Brock Lesnar out, especially to be the equalizer, going up against Roman Reigns. So I guess that's really what that is, kind of like a Superman Doomsday type of feud or whatever the case is that that's the main purpose for Brock Lesnar to be there, I suppose. But in other news, in the last time is now turning quarterfinal match. Fast forward from Friday to Monday, we have Gunther versus Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes, and congrats to Melo for even making it to this last time is now tournament. Ultimately, his journey would come to an end as the reigning general Gunther would win, by way of pinfall with the powerbomb. Great match, by the way. You know what I mean? And like saying for someone like Gunther to make Carmelo look even better, and just to bring the best out of him. I mean, like, for Melo to have that kind of spotlight, it's really special. Even though he lost, it was definitely a step in a much better direction, compared to where he's been, since he's got up to the main roster. No offense, but I knew that Gunther was going to win. But like I said, it was great to see. Great to see Melo's performance. So like I said, Gunther's going to advance to the semifinals of the last time is now tournament. And so of course, Dominic Mysterio beat a little person dressed up as John Cena. Of course, Dirty Dom vowed to take back the Intercontinental Championship of Survivor Series before Cena's music hit, rather than Cena. A little person came out dressed as Cena. Came to the ring, cut it short. Cena style promo before Dirty Dom delivered a kick, a 619, and a frog splash with salt. That's terrible. Rey Mysterio defeated JD with bobblehead by way of pinfall after 619. Finn Balor attempted to interfere late in the match when Mysterio sent the bobblehead, of course, head first, and the Balor's, and Finn Balor settled the match ending 619. The women's WarGames teams brawled after coming face to face. Ultimately, the team of AJ Lee, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte Flair managed to run off their rivals as a go-home show. And of course, the last Sabbath now tournament quarterfinal match. We saw the Solo Sikoa defeated Penta by way of referee stoppage after Penta suffered what appeared to be a legitimate injury during the match. So my thoughts and prayers go out to Penta. May he have a speedy recovery. For a talent like that to get injured, that's a huge blow. If anything, I would say that was pretty devastating to even witness. And then next up, we're gonna have the NXT recap, if you will. And NXT's definitely been on a roll, especially with this Gold Rush. It's NXT Gold Rush 2025. And so now, to it right now. It was great to see John Cena, address the NXT universe, if you will. As far as that's concerned. So here are the results for matter of fact, of course, John Cena even made his picks for Iron Survivor Challenge matches. Of course, matches for NXT. And the thing is, the segment was not recorded in front of the audience, so it's still up for speculation, as would be any other backstage segments, video packages, or any other material that was not actually live. So, based on Miles Warren versus Trick Williams, I'm pretty sure there's some other qualifying matches that will be announced. But of course, in terms of what we saw, this week on NXT Gold Rush, we saw that Jackson Drake retained the WWE Evolve Championship over Super Strong Legacy. Backstage, Ethan Page gave Soul Ruka some advice to just focus on herself. Miles Warren told Ruka not to believe in what Page was saying, so they had some crosswords with one another. Fallon Henley won the vacated WWE Speed Women's Championship by defeating Zarya. John Cena's Iron Survivor Challenge picks were Javon Evans, Leon Slater, Joe Hendry, Deion Lennox from Dark State, and Miles Bourne. Those were picks for the men. And for the women, it was Sol Ruka, Lola Vice, Kalani Jordan, Jordan Grace, and Kendall Gray for the women. So, clearly Cena knows ball. You know what I mean? So, those are great choices coming from an absolute legend and icon like John Cena. In the triple threat match for the TNA Knockouts World Championship, we have Lee Ying Lei defeated Kalani Jordan and Jordan Grace by way of pinfall to win the TNA Knockouts World Championship. Kendall Gray retained the WWE Evolve Women's Championship over Laney Reed. And then we have Miles Bourne defeating Trick Williams to qualify for the Iron Survivor Challenge. And we have Trick Williams came out to the ring, called up Miles Bourne. Dark State went to win the attack. And Bourne was backed up by Javon Evans, Leon Slater, Joe Andrew, all of Cena's picks. And so as far as that, let's say, of course, those are results for those were the results as it pertains to so that, of course, like I said, as it pertains to NXT, if anything, like I said, the Gold Rush, this Gold Rush in MSG has been been very impressive to me, to be honest with you. And so now, last but not least, it is time to go into my predictions for WarGames. And matter of fact, on Monday, Mike and I, we're doing our predictions as well. And so, as we see, for the Women's World Championship match, Stephanie Valkyrie versus Nikki Bella, I'm going with La Primera Stephanie Valkyrie to retain the Women's World Championship. For the Intercontinental Championship, of course, we have John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio, Dirty Dominic. Cena's the first ballot Hall of Famer and first 17-time world champion recognized by WWE. And recently, he's now becoming a Grand Slam champion. With that being said, however, since he is on his way out the door, I am going to go. I'm going to go with Dirty Dominic, to regain the Intercontinental Championship. And I think this IC title run was just to pad Cena's stats to add to his resume. For the sake of officially becoming a Grand Slam champion, while also, like I said, breaking Flair's record, all in the same year. So like I said, Cena's had a tremendous year, and I'm also a fan of Cena's San Diego shirt. Even though I'm not a Padres fan, but at the same time, I think that shirt looked great. You know what I mean? As many of his shirts, including the Yankee shirt at Madison Square Garden last week for his last Raw. You know what I mean? So I definitely like the designs. I want to get a Grand Slam Cena shirt before it's all said and done. But yeah, like I said, other than that, Dirty Dom is going to get the IC title back. For the women's WarGames match, Rhea versus Io versus Rhea, Io, Alexa, Charlotte, and AJ versus Nia Jax, Lash Legend, the Kabuki Warriors, and Becky Lynch. Multiple rivalries coming to a head in this women's WarGames match. I may be right or I may be wrong. There is a part of me that I want to say, I think for the sake of getting revenge, I want to say Becky's team ends up winning. Like I said, for the payback on AJ, who's been AWOL, for the longest time, ever since WrestlePalooza. And I think they're doing these, throwing AJ in another, tag situation to, I guess for the sake of covering up her ring rust, if you will. What I mean? So as far as that's concerned, and also with this new tag team of Nia and Lash Legend, I want to see them win just for the sake of adding, like I said, just adding validation to them, if you will. So with that being said, I'm going with a Team Becky, for the women's WarGames match. Last but not least, it's only 4 matches on the card. In the Paul Levesque Triple H regime, just short matches, 4 to 5, at best, and that's it. You know what I mean? So, they're not gonna have long, drawn out cards, like they did under Vince. But with that being said, we have the team of CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, the Usos, and Roman Reigns versus Division with Braun Breaker, Braun Strowman, Logan Paul, Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. With that being said, for the men's War Games, I am going with Team Bloodline, along with Punk and Cody, Bloodline and company, if you will. Hence, that's why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. So those are my predictions. Lately, War Games hasn't, like this build hasn't been all that special yet. I think just because of this, the state of the product right now, so that's the way I see it. And so, with that being said, before I go, I would like to give my birthday shout outs. On November 25th, NFL Hall of Fame wide receiver Chris Carter turned 60. On November 26th, rock and roll was the queen of rock and roll. The late great Hall of Famer Tina Turner would turn 86. Garcelle, and of course, famously known for the Jamie Foxx show, turns 59. On November 27th, Jimi Hendrix would turn 83. The Rain Man Sean Kemp turns 56. James Avery, formerly known as Uncle Phil, rest in peace, would turn 80. And Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, would turn 63. And that's it. Of course, that's it when it comes to the birthdays. Like I said, as a matter of fact, we give out some other birthday shout outs as well. Big Cat Ernie Ladd will turn 87 on November 28th. Chadwick Boseman will turn 49 on November 29th. Roger Troutman would have turned 74 on November 29th. Russell Wilson turns 37 on that day. Danny Brooke turns 37 as well. Of course, Wilkins from the Jobberteers podcast turns 38. Of course, Don Cheadle turns 61 on that day. JBL turns 59. The Game turns 46. Jerry Lawler turns 76. And then November 30th, Naomi turns 38. Christian turns 52. And Bo Jackson turns 63. That's it for the birthdays. And of course, the word of wisdom is that God has given us the authority under the direction of our commissioner, Jesus Christ, to shut down any onslaught that the devil throws at us. And of course, another word of wisdom is that, like I said, of course, Jesus is looking for multiple stones to produce more than what one individual stone could do by themselves, and just as America, just as there are different embassies, all across the world, the church is God's embassy to the world around us, and so of course, like I said, of course, that's my word of wisdom. And also remember that you are victorious because greater is He that's in you than he that's in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast by way of iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Also, you can also watch it by way of YouTube as well, youtube.com/FR Westbrook Jr. And of course, thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for listening. And may this day be the very best day of your life, and have a very, very happy and prosperous Thanksgiving.